I've never had as busy of a weekend than those fucking guys had in my life.
Sound like a fucking loser. I
Mister, I would have gone to bed at
Yeah,
9.
Mister, let me just hang out with Willoughby and watch Twilight Zone, motherfucker.
Yeah, it's almost 10 o'clock. Can we hurry the fuck up?
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
I
finally
watched. I
finally
watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. I'm Alain.
And this is David, and today I finally watched Everybody Wants Some.
And today we have my wife, Taylor, here solely because Everybody Wants Some is her favorite movie. Right, babe?
Yeah. Hello.
And so much like we did last week with Bloodsport, Taylor actually showed David and his wife years ago Everybody Wants Some.
I tried to.
Well, we did not. We weren't convinced that David and Ashley were as invested in the film as we would have liked them to be. But let's look at this as a second chance for David, and he'll give us his opinion on what he truly thinks of Everybody Wants Some.
Well, so, I mean, Taylor, as I explained to you several times after that day, that Ashley and I were fighting. That's why she didn't like the movie or say anything. And I've reminded her that, like, I've said, like, oh, you should rewatch it. And she's like, nah, I don't really want to. But she doesn't even remember what the fight was about, nor am I going to remind her. But I liked it when we watched it then. I thought it was good. I was just dealing with, all of that at the time, so.
Well, what's your opinion on it now?
I mean, are we sure this is a good movie?
Very funny. Very funny.
I mean,
No,
so it's directed by Richard Linklater, who has done a lot of really great films. He did the Before trilogy. He did Dazed and Confused is probably what he's most famous for. Boyhood,
the Newton Boys, yeah.
and of course School of Rock and Bad News Bears. But which I hate.
You can't just lump those two movies together.
Okay, let me clarify.
School of Rock is a masterpiece.
It is. Let me clarify. Bad News Bears is the movie I hate. But yeah, so I mean, he is a director who I feel like focuses on characters more than plot most of the time, and really knows how to bring out the best in actors in like through certain roles. But yeah, so you can't sit there, David, and say it's not a good movie.
No, it is a good movie. I was thinking about this. Like, there is no discernible plot to this movie whatsoever. I mean, it's a hangout movie. And I think in other hands, it wouldn't necessarily be good, which then led me down the rabbit hole. And I texted my Garrett about this.
You're Garrett?
Well, I was going to say my friend, and I was like, I call him Garrett every time I say who it is. So, although he hasn't been on the pod in forever, so what the fuck's that about, dude? But who's the best, like, director of hangout movies? And I think it's obviously Richard Linklater, but, like, the other options are, I think, Quentin Tarantino with Jackie Brown and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. All those have plots, so maybe a little too plot heavy. He brought up Judd Apatow, which I think is a good one, but those are also just like kind of strict comedies. Whereas like this is only a comedy in the fact that it's like not a drama. And I think the only other comparable, and I think people love him, but he's not on the same level to me, is Kevin Smith.
Yeah, I can see that. I agree he's not on the same level. But even Clerks has I feel like Clerks has more plot than this film. Not to say that I think this film does have a plot. It's like the preparation, the weekend before they get ready for class, right? And then if you want to find like an actual story, it's the blooming romance that happens between the main character Jake and Beverly 45 minutes into the film. And then to the end from there. But yeah, I mean, I think Taylor, the reason that this is your favorite film is because you love hangout films.
I do. I love hangout films, and I like that it's so character driven, because it's like a less than 2 hour long movie. And by the end of the movie, you feel like you've known these people for years. And I just love that. There's just something that feels so good about that.
Well, and for Taylor's sake, it doesn't help that they're like all hot guys either.
That's not true. That's not necessarily true.
Didn't hurt me either.
Do you want to give the quick story on how we so happened to come upon this movie?
Yeah, so it was like the middle of the day on a Saturday, and we were walking around the promenade in LA, and we were next to a movie theater, and we had nothing to do, and we said, we'll just go in, and whatever's playing, we'll just walk in to whatever is playing.
We go up to the maitre d' and we're like, what's playing? Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and I let Alain pick, because there were a few that were like within like a 30-minute range of playing. So I let Alain pick. He comes back and he tells me it's called Everybody Wants Some. And I look it up and it says it's a sports movie. And I hate, like, not that I hate sports movies, because there's a few select good sports movies, but I don't usually like sports movies. And I was like, you just ruined my Saturday. This is the worst thing you could have possibly picked, is this sports movie. I was mad you chose that movie. We watched the movie. We walked out of the movie, and I turned to you and I went, that's my favorite movie.
Yeah, you liked it immediately. And then I liked it okay. Like, I was like, yeah, it was a pretty good movie. And I think we actually recently watched, at that time, we recently watched Dazed and Confused. And, man, that was, no?
We didn't watch Dazed and Confused until after, because really, I had not even seen School of Rock.
No, you haven't. You actually saw School of Rock like in
now.
the last year.
Last couple of years, yeah. But it was the first Richard Linklater film that I ever saw, and I had never like really heard of that type of movie. And I was like, wow, this is something I've never experienced. So then we watched Dazed and Confused.
I really thought we watched Dazed and Confused before, but I guess that doesn't make sense. David, it's been so long since I've seen Dazed and Confused. Did that have more of a plot than Everybody Wants Some?
Slightly, maybe. I mean, no, it's just like the last days of high school. I actually saw this movie. I didn't see Dazed and Confused until really late, and I think after this movie. And that one's awesome too, by the way. And yeah, I like this movie too. Just I was just fucking around because of Bloodsport, but this is a good movie.
It's funny because it's like Bloodsport's your favorite film, and Everybody Wants Some is Taylor's favorite film, and I'm kind of just like, the middleman on both. But for some reason, your vendetta against me is attacking Taylor's favorite movie.
It's just the victim in the way. It's the collateral damage, if you will.
I'm sorry, babe.
Terrible.
But I mean, so yeah, I kind of like, I think Richard Linklater himself said that this is almost like the unverified sequel to Dazed and Confused, where it's like Dazed and Confused is about high school in the 70s, and this is about college in the 80s. And then if you read all of the critical like one-liners to from reviewers, everyone is like, Dazed and Confused, but set in the 80s. I was like, it's not really like telling you what this movie is about, but sure, I guess.
No, that's even on the cover of the DVD, is like Dazed and Confused meets 80s. And then we watched Dazed and Confused, and I was like, no, this is nothing like Dazed and Confused.
There's parallels, right? It's like Matthew McConaughey's character in Dazed and Confused wants high school poo-tang all the time, and then these guys want to have sex all the time, hence the name Everybody Wants Some. So that's what they're after. And then there's like a getting high scene in each one. But like, it's the 70s and 80s. So if you're going to write those films, of course you're going to write about, like, there's going to be sex and drugs in those films.
I feel like saying that the movie being called Everybody Wants Some, and they all want sex all the time, and that's why the movie's called Everybody Wants Some. I don't think that's correct.
In your opinion, why is it called Everybody Wants Some?
I think it's more about them wanting acceptance, them wanting to find themselves, like self-acceptance, but also acceptance into like a group, into the team, into a relationship, into themselves. It's all about like just wanting to be accepted.
Everybody wants some attention. David, do you agree? What's your opinion on the title?
Yeah, I agree with Taylor. No, I mean it's like a double entendre, right? It's everybody wants some. It's the surface level of like Finn specifically is just wanting sex. But then yeah, like the undercurrent of what Taylor's saying, especially how like our main character played by Brody Jenner.
Brody Jenner?
Isn't that his name?
Bruce. No, not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Blake
it Bruce?
Jenner.
Blake Jenner. Okay, we were both wrong, and that's okay. We accept that.
Is Brody? Well, actually, this led me to a thought of like, do you think his career has struggled somewhat with that last name? Because I don't think he's related at all.
He's not related at all, and I always think he is every time I hear his name.
I know, so I wonder if that like negatively affects his ability to like get good roles because he's good in this. But his character, you kind of lump him in with the rest of these guys, and then you kind of realize towards the end, like the conversation where they're like floating in the river, like that he is like kind of different than the rest of them. And so like, I think you have Finn's character who is like the surface level of what the title of the movie means, and then you have like Brody Jenner over here, Blake Jenner, who's like, what he's actually after,
Yeah, I mean, also like Everybody Wants Some is obviously the title of a Van Halen song that came out in the 80s. That's all about sex too. So obviously there's some correlation to it, but like, what?
We changed the subject like 8 minutes ago.
No, I'm just saying but what I'm saying is that yes, there are characters like Finn, played by Glenn Powell, that all they're after is sex, and hence the title from the 80s song by Van Halen. But then on a deeper surface,
who sings the song? Who's the song by?
On a deeper level, by the taking from the main character Jake. Yeah, I agree with you, David. It's probably on a deeper level than we first realized when we're introduced to the character.
I disagree. I'm just gonna disagree with everything you say.
Okay, no, go ahead. Elaborate. What do you disagree with?
I disagree with that he's different from everybody. I don't think that's true. I think that we are shown on screen because he has private conversations with someone not on the team, that we get to see that. But I think the insinuation was that any of these dudes, if you were to get them alone with someone that they really care about, that they're all way more than just these, overconfident, sex crazed jocks.
Right. Well, and also like for example, I think we do have a moment with each character that kind of breaks them down at that level. And then the hardest one to do that is probably Glenn Powell's character, Finn. But I think we also we get that at the very end with him too. So we get it with everyone a little bit at a certain. It's also how they're written, right, David? Like there's some characters and actors in this movie that are given way more priority than some other ones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you ever see, unless you think that Glenn Powell's character Finn actually is a big astrology guy. I don't think you ever get like a view of him just actually caring about a woman. You know what I mean? Maybe that's like a deleted scene later on.
No, I don't even think it's like, I don't think you get that personal touch with him with a woman. I think you get it with his buddies.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
in that scene where he's talking about astrology and they call him out, I think you get kind of him, like the layers peeled back when he's kind of upset about it. Okay, so we'll probably just get into the plot now. It starts out with our introduction to Jake coming up to the. I'm just gonna call it the frat house. I know they're not a frat; they're a baseball team, but I'm not gonna call it the baseball team house. Uh,
Call it
it's
the
a
baseball
frat
house.
house.
You can call it the baseball house. You know what the very beginning of this reminded me of is so he's driving through the town and just basically checking out women's asses and
Yep.
women in general. And it reminded me that when I went to law school, I went in Gainesville, and people would always talk about how like there were just fender benders every August because like guys would be like looking at the new girls that were on campus like on the main road, and just like that it was like a known thing that happened of like you had to like make sure you didn't hit the person in front of you. So that just like reminded me of that because he is just like fucking staring at everybody as he comes in, like the going from high school to college and like having that freedom. I'm just like being like the pent up hormones. I think like that little scene is kind of perfect just to show like his rolling into town.
No, I think it's a good character introduction, but it's also a good like movie introduction. Like this is what it's about. It's like the coming of age of these characters in this age range. I every time I have like a while between between the time I've seen this movie, I always remember all of them in the car driving around picking up Zoe Ditch,
Deutsch.
Deutsch. Yeah, okay. Picking up Deutsch and checking out her room number. I always remember that as the first scene. I always forget the waterbed scene, but the waterbed scene is so good because it does such a great job introducing the main characters. Like there's a bar scene later on, a little bit later on, that introduces like the rest of the gang, but this is like the core character introduction with oh my god, what, Coma, Roper, no, sorry, Coma was at the bar. It's Roper,
Coma.
Dale.
Dale, Finn, and then
We see Jay when he walks up. McReynolds.
yep,
Mm-hmm.
Willoughby,
Buter Perkins.
Buter Perkins, and oh, you said Dale,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a oh no, that was Finn. Yeah, so those are the guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Oh,
what?
and Tyler Hoechlin's character, I forget his name.
It's McReynolds.
McReynolds. Okay.
He looks like, I was looking this up right now because they're obviously like not that close. Well, yeah, he looks like his older brother in this movie could be Billy Crudup.
I agree.
Like with the long hair, I was like, who the fuck is that guy? Even though you told me he was in this, I was like, who is that? And like
Yeah.
you said it again, and it finally like clicked. I think his character is kind of the one that I appreciated the most. Like, I think he's the one that my opinion of from the beginning of the movie to the end changes the most, whereas Finn is basically the same guy throughout, like does not change to me at all. Maybe you just get like a little bit more information on him, but like Hoechlin's character I think is really good.
Would you say like from his character development to from like the game of ping pong to him having the talk to Jay about like don't be such a douche pitcher, like that kind of development?
Well, it's not a development. It's just like the audience seeing who he is, and it's also like us seeing like why someone like Roper, but the rest of the team kind of respects him so much. And like you would in the beginning, you're like, oh, why do we put up with this shit? But it's like there's this subtle thing when they get in the fight at the bar, and Roper tells him, "Hey, like stay away," and I'm like, oh, is it because he's like your best player? And it's like maybe it could be part of that, but it's also just like they all one, he's going to become a pro, so they don't want to fuck up his his ability to make money later on. But two, like the way he handles Jay, and then after like hitting a home run off of him, and the way he talks shit to him, but then when Jay comes up to him and doesn't even apologize, and he accepts his apology without even getting it, And then the way like Jay smacks him on the ass, and then just the little smile he gets, like he got a kick out of helping the team.
Yeah.
And like it's just like that's who you want to be your leader. And I think that's so I guess Linklater played baseball in like high school, college. And so like I think a lot of like the sports stuff he got really right in this.
Even the scout who's pretending to be painting the trim off the house.
I still don't know if that's real. I don't know. I don't
It's
think it is.
definitely not real.
It's definitely not real.
I don't know. I mean, do you know it's not real?
I do.
Also,
I
this is
think
not
I
a
know
thing.
thin enough to know that it's not real.
This isn't a thing that I can discuss with you as much, but there are definitely like good baseball players in this movie and bad baseball players from just the one scene. And so Hotchlin and the guy that plays Roper played college baseball, and you can tell that they're really fucking good. And then the other kid that was pretty good is the freshman with like long curly hair. He like threw one time, and I was like, oh, that's good. But then you have like, and Jenner, I think Jenner threw pretty well, although he threw a lot of balls that were called strikes. But Willoughby did not look like he could play baseball all that well.
When I told Taylor that Willoughby is played by Wyatt Russell, the same guy who plays U.S. Agent in Falcon and the Winter Soldier show, we were like, she still couldn't see it. Like even throughout the movie, she couldn't see it.
Halfway through the movie, I was like, you know what's crazy about this movie is like a lot of these actors aren't in a lot of other things.
Right.
And so, and the character like building is so good. Not character building, but like they're so fleshed out
Mhm.
that you forget that these are actors and you just assume that they're just kind of just hanging out and not really putting any effort into the acting. Like this is just who they are. They just casted them based on like how similar they were to the character, and they're just kind of chilling. And getting that information that he was U.S. soldier, I was like, oh shit, he's acting in this, and he's doing really good.
I feel like he's doing a lot, and I also think Glenn Powell was doing like a lot. Like his was kind of the character that the most felt like, not that it was not a real person, but it was kind of a caricature a little bit. You know what I mean? Like a larger than life kind of person.
I feel like every single one of them was what you just described.
I mean,
I feel like, but
Jake
like
isn't.
like good characters, I think they're all based in truth, and Jay kind of has to be our normal guy, right? Because he's the main character, so we have to relate to him in the audience has to relate to him in a certain way. But then I think outside of that, everyone is based in truth, but is also larger than life, like Finn, like McReynolds, like all of them. Oh my God, Jay is the most ridiculous character, though. He is, and I think we all know someone like that.
I take that back. It is Jay.
It is Jay, but we all know someone like that. Maybe to not that extreme, but that's a crazy. There's this. I think my favorite line in the movie is where they get out of the. I think it's the Jolly Fox, or maybe it's the sound machine, and they get kicked out. Right? Jay's like, "Oh, okay, cool," and they're like, "No, you're not coming with us." And he's like, "Okay, that I'm gonna run home." And he runs home, and as he's running home, he goes, "Don't check your pillows." And then I think Finn is like, "What
does that mean?
What does that mean?"
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think a couple of my favorite lines were during the baseball later on, and this is kind of funny because it's like this movie takes place in 1980, so it's a little bit like anachronistic, but it doesn't actually like matter, right? But so during batting practice, McReynolds calls Jay meat, which is like a reference to Bull Durham, which happens after this in the 90s. But then also Jay at one point goes, "You want me on this mound," which is definitely fucking A Few Good Men, which also didn't come out in 1980. But just those two, like I like those like back to back in their like movie references. But this movie, like the whole thing is just like great line after line. and I said to you, I was like, it's gonna be hard to go kind of beat by beat, but it's like because
Yeah.
it is just a hangout movie. Um,
But I
but
think
it's
like for all the scenes that we're talking about now, we could go through this movie scene by scene, come up to those scenes, and still find more stuff to talk about with different characters in each of those scenes. Another good one is by Willoughby, where he's just like, I wrote this one down too. They're getting high, and he goes, what is it? He goes, finding the tangents within the artistry
it sounds like something you would have said to a girl at a bar.
while high.
My favorite line was like, "Fucking on a waterbed is like fucking a girl on top of another very fat girl."
Okay, so afterwards is one of my favorite scenes. The scene I always get confused to the beginning is they're driving around, and they're singing. Oh fuck, what's that song? David, you were born during this era. What's that song?
I don't remember what they were singing.
I said hip hop, heavy to the hip hop, and you don't stop.
That was it.
So the bang bang boogie. Okay.
No.
But yeah, so they're driving around trying to pick up chicks, and then I love the turnaround cars. Finn comes up and he's like, I couldn't help but see that you girls were being harassed by that guy in the car back there
That
all the
asshole.
time. Well, that's Coma, or is that Roper?
Roper.
Yeah, Roper like has his head down, like. But yeah, this is where we get introduced to Beverly and the romance between her and Jake, the quiet guy in the middle in the back. Kind of start. It's funny because they have like their introduction here, but then like 45 minutes of the movie go by, and then there's the phone call with them, and then pretty much the rest of the movie at that point is their relationship. But it's funny how this seed is planted and then just not revisited for like the bulk of the movie.
Yeah, you're not even sure it'll come back up, right? Like the first time you see this, I was right because I knew who Zoe Deutsch was, and it's like you don't have her in that role if you're not going to have her come. She's probably the most recognizable person at the time this movie came out, I would say.
Maybe because then I read on somewhere that this was her big break.
No, because she was in fucking Vampire Academy before this, which I don't know. That was like honestly probably
I wouldn't call that anyone's big break.
There's a detriment to her career. Have I ever told you? So, Ashley and I were when we were dating. She chose the movie for Valentine's Day, and I let her choose Vampire Academy. And like 15 minutes into the movie, she turns to me and she goes, "I am so sorry." She's like,
At least she knew. At least she apologized.
she was like, "We can leave if you want." And I was like, "No, at least Zoe Deutsch is really hot." So no, I didn't say that part. But that was like that movie's maybe one of the worst movies I've ever seen in theaters. And so it is nice to see her in this and like, not just have that be the only thing I saw her in for so long and just be like, because that movie's awful.
Last night we found out that Zoe Deutsch is the daughter of Leah Thompson, and that was new news to me.
I'm glad you got
that
there.
was news to me also, but now that you say that, she looks exactly like her mom.
Yep. Yeah, like you can definitely see it after the fact. I also like the Glenn Powell line of like, if you were smart, you would have noticed the typewriter when like Roper first tries to hit on her, and then Jake is like, "Hey, I want to see what room she goes in," and he's like, "Oh, this went from cute to restraining order real quick." It's like another great line.
I also really like Dale in this scene. They're like I don't know why Jake thinks that they would help him at this moment, but he's like, "Oh, her room number is 307. Help me remember that." And Dale's like, "Yeah, it's 309, 12, 3012, 306, 6." Just
Well,
trying
then
to
right
fuck with him.
right after this, plumbers they say like something like a joke, and he's like, "I got your joke right here," and they're like, "Did you just call his dick a joke?"
Um, so now we head over to the Fox Bar, and this is where we meet the rest of the guys. We meet the guy you met in Atlanta,
Nesbitt.
Nesbitt.
Nez.
Meet Nesbitt. We meet that curly hair freshman that you were talking about earlier, David.
I still don't know his name.
Who cares? And then Coma. We meet Coma.
Yeah, I mean, Coma's always around. Brumley, I think, is the freshman's name.
Okay. Who else? Is that? I think Brumley and Nesbitt are probably the focus of this scene, like the character introduction, and they're. Oh, we meet Jay too. This is where we meet. Well, this is where we officially meet Jay, not just like uh, working his hand out on the porch steps of the second frat house, but um,
I think we really meet Jay. Like, I guess we see him here, but we really meet him like in the coaches' meeting after this. Like, that's like a really kind of pivotal one too, where it's maybe like the only plot presentation in the movie of like, hey, no drinking in your rooms and no sex in your rooms, like no girls up there. We don't want to lose the houses. And so then it's like, all right, the movie is like having sex and drinking in our rooms.
yeah, that's true. That's true. It's like they have the fornication room that I love too. Like they're all buddies, right? But I would say the only true antagonist is probably Buter, like directly towards Jake. He's the guy who's constantly like fucking up his mojo, like won't dude, when he comes in, okay, first of all, his introduction is hilarious. He's just in his tidy whities, but then later on when Jake tries to go to the room to like hook up with that girl, he's just there with like two of his other cowboy hat toting friends, and I'm like, this is the lamest get together I've ever seen.
He was telling his friends a story, and they thought it was so great and hilarious, and they started doing that hand thing that's like
Oh yeah,
pretending like
yeah.
you're smacking the top of dip, and it makes that noise. And up until that point, I thought that just like everybody in high school and college like just did that. Like I thought that everybody in the whole world, that was like a thing. And I turned to Alain and I was like, "Did your whole high school do that?" And he was like, "No." And I think that's when I realized that I went to a redneck high school.
Well, my high school also just consisted of two people, but but the most times I've ever seen people do that, like that becoming popular, was in college. I didn't see the rise of that in high school. But I wonder if it's just demographically. Like, yeah, you probably were in a more beautiful part of town.
I really was.
I like the when Buter says he's gonna have to leave because he thinks his girlfriend's pregnant, and then I forget what the first bet was, and Finn's like, "That's a bad bet. Why would you make that bet?" He's like, "A better bet would be like, is he related to his girlfriend?" And the guy's like, "Okay, first cousins. Bet you first cousins." He's like, "That's also a bad bet. I'm gonna take that bet." And then the other guy's like, "I don't know if that's a bad bet." And he's like, "Oh, really?"
um when they, at this point, I think they're at the no, they're not at the sound machine yet, because there's another house party that happens here, but I want to talk about that now. So there's another house party that they're like, when they're going around and we meet Zoe Deutsch, they're inviting all these girls and they're like, "When's the party?" And there's like, "As soon as you come, baby," and stuff like that. And so they have this huge party, and they come back from the bar and bring all the girls with them. But there's this one where, so Jake is up in his room trying to convince Billy Buter to get out. And then the girl that he picked up from the bar, he goes back, and that curly haired freshman guy is dancing with her. And he's like, "Beat it." and the facial expression he makes is this like, "Oh, you?" Okay, like the guy is just happy to be there. Like there's no, I could like, there's no drama with that character.
One of the funny things is McReynolds later on is like making fun of McReynolds like uses a ton of cologne and they laugh at him and he's like, all right, if you guys want to keep doing the 5 knuckle shuffle, and he's like, what's that? And McReynolds like mimes jacking off. And Brumley's like, oh, that's hilarious. And then Plummer's like, you're so fucking desperate. And he's like, yeah, desperate for pussy.
And then as soon as everyone leaves the room, as after he says that, he takes the cologne and like pours it down his pants.
He is a great part of the movie, Brumley. Even though we didn't know his name, he is like a good part of it.
I think what this movie does well too, and there's a couple of I feel like honestly cringe scenes in this movie that I'm just like, I don't know if the writing is lacking or if they're just meaning it to be this awkward, and it's mostly to do with the scenes with Blake Jenner and Zoe Deutsch. But there's also other scenes in this movie where it's so cringe and so awkward, but it's, you know, that they're purposely, like, he's purposely writing it that way because of who these guys are. And I can't think of a more cringe scene than with Jay trying to get a screwdriver at the bar, and the guy flicks the lime. He goes, "Did you just flick a lime in my screwdriver?"
And what does he call him? Pancho Villa, and then he thinks it's kind of over, and then the guy attacks him. Yeah, that's a great scene. That's a great scene.
Anything that Jay ever says is super cringe.
Yeah, I mean, that is the point. I don't think that's bad writing. I think he's...
No, I don't think that's bad writing. I think that's purposely cringe, and I love it.
The raw fucking dog. I mean...
They call me the raw dog!
I love how
it's like, why did they call you the raw dog?
Because I'm the raw fucking dog.
I like when he asks that girl, like, do you know why they call me the raw dog? And she's like, starts walking away, and he's like, because I'm the fucking raw dog. There are, like, before that fight scene, were a couple like lines I really liked. One is the Finn like telling the girls about his average size cock and them explaining why that works, which is really funny. And then you just sort of under the breath hear him, because he's not the focus of the scene, but you hear Finn like, I'm a grower, not a shower, guys. But the other one is when Nez is pitching to McReynolds and with the axe.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then he's like, this is the best day of my life until tomorrow. And I just love the fucking cockiness from him of like, every day is the best day of my life.
There's just small little lines, like just little tiny conversations people have. They're not even fully on camera. Like the camera is already panning away to a different character, and these characters are still talking, but sometimes it's just like the juiciest little line. And one of those is the camera is literally panning away from them picking up the half-cut, like the freshly half-cut baseball from McReynolds. And one guy goes, do you know how strong you have to be for this?
It's quick bat speed, I think, in order to make that happen. So the other thing I like about this movie too is just the like, I don't think we repeat like a club bar scene. Like first it's the Fox, then they go to the disco the next night, maybe, or like later. I think it's the next night.
I feel like we're in the Sound Machine twice at least. Yeah. We are, right?
Okay.
Yeah, the first time it all goes really great. They pick up a lot of girls who also just came and are also kind of thirsty.
Oh, they just came.
And then the second time they come, they can't get anybody to talk to them.
What I was saying is they go to a bunch of different places. You have disco. First of all, there's just a bar, then disco, then country, right? And then the punk part is kind of my favorite, because you don't really expect that. Like when that happened, I think in a movie you kind of expect like the baseball guys to be like, "Oh, what the fuck? You hang out with this guy?" And he's like the like afternoon special movie where they're like, he has to choose between his high school friends who's weird and his new friends. But instead Finch is like, fuck yeah, we'll drink with these guys. And Coma's a little, but my point is just like, it all actually leads to kind of a point the movie's trying to make, where Jake is like, is it Jake or Blake? What's his real name? Jake.
Jake is his character name. Blake is his real name.
Where Jake, it's fucking confusing. Should have given him a different name once he signed on for this. Where Jake is like, isn't this kind of fucking, pathetic that we're just changing who we are in order to like, and Finn makes this comment about, no, you got to adapt to get
It's
to get.
adaptation, man. It's it's
The
Mother
animal
Nature. It's the
kingdom.
animal kingdom.
But I think the other point of the movie is just like the way that, and it's all done in a 3-day period, and in this case, an hour and 50-minute movie. But to just show you kind of like, in high school, you're stuck in these kind of cliques.
Yeah.
At least a lot of people are. But then in college, no one really gives a shit about that. And it's like you're just there to have fun and like try new things, and it's like a much more freer experience, than high school.
And I do love how Finn is the forefront of this whole movement, from one thing to the other for like the whole group of guys. And I also love that there's just no like changing of the costume scene. They're just like, yeah, we're gonna go home and change. We'll meet you at the country bar. And it's just like they just all own cowboy hats. They're just prepared. Or do you think because Billy Autry is checking in on his girlfriend, do you think they broke into his room and he had like 12 cowboy hats and they all stole his cowboy hats?
That one.
Yeah.
So, David, if you were part of this crew, you would just wear the same t-shirt and shorts to every club.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to clubs, first of all. I'll just fucking go to bed at 9:00 at night as I'm like listening to records, and then I guess watching VHSs or Betamax tapes with, me and Willoughby are just fucking watching the the Twilight Zone.
Fucking high.
The episode he described about the Twilight Zone, I was like, that is a good fucking episode.
Yeah.
And I love how he just knew the season and the episode and the name and everything about it. So now,
fun fact, the guy
Yeah.
who plays Willoughby, his father acted in the Twilight Zone.
Oh.
That's a fun fact. I think now would be a good point with just like mentioning all the bar scenes, all the different bar scenes, how great the music is in this whole movie. Like not just like the well-known music, but just like even like the composing beats for like the quieter scenes. Like everything is just really well done. Even like when the well-known music of the era comes on, it feels like someone's playing it on vinyl in a corner. It doesn't feel like it's like a movie soundtrack. It just feels like pretty planted in the scene. And I mean, it's the 80s. It's like I feel like everyone's always playing music like realistically back then. So I don't know. I wanted to give a shout out to the soundtrack of the movie. I think it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
We're now at my favorite scene, I think, unless you want to go back. But it's the ping pong scene is my favorite scene.
Oh, I'm not
really.
Yeah, I just love how pissed McReynolds gets, Hotchland gets, and just like all the guys being there because like McReynolds just doesn't lose, and so someone's beating him at something, and they're all fucking enjoying it because of like how mad he gets, and and like they're not receiving the ire of his rage. I don't know. It's so fun. Like it's such a funny scene to me, and it's also just like it kind of like ping pong. Ping pong is kind of a game that like you can be really good at and you can beat most people, and then you just find someone who's like, oh, I can't even like fucking touch what he does. You know what I mean? Like there's like so many like levels to it where you're just like can get your ass kicked by someone and not even know it, like see it coming.
When McReynolds is walking off and Jake goes, but my dad used to play a lot, like trying to make an excuse on like why he's so good. But before this scene is a couple of scenes that I just want to go back over. So Jake goes into his room and finds Nesbitt and who's wearing his shirt?
Roper.
Mm-hmm.
And Roper takes his shirt, whatever. But how weird Nesbitt is, he taking his record, is like, you better not scratch. He's like, what? He's like, what? He's like, what? And then just like disappears. I think that's one of your favorite moments.
That whole
Nesbit.
scene is so great when he walks in and Roper's like, I got the best cheese on campus. Everybody comes up to me and they go, wow, you got the best cheese on campus. And
It's-
Jake's like, could those pants be any tighter, dude?
Roper's like borderline Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, like in that. And then the other thing is I was thinking is Nesbit is like really lucky that Jay is on the team because otherwise he is the Jay of that team. He's like the second weirdest guy. So all of the weirdness is deflected on Jay. And without Jay, everyone's like, this fucking Nez guy is real fucking weird.
No.
Yes. Who else? Who
Peter
else?
Perkins.
Okay, all right. But I mean, he's never there. He's dealing with pregnant lady.
Yeah. But I think it's Peter Perkins. But Nesbit is probably one of my favorite characters. He's so bizarre. I
That's what I
just feel
said.
like but he's not bizarre in like a cringe way. He's just bizarre in like I don't know. It's just weird.
I also think going back a little forward, the high scene, like where they're all high with Willoughby, is like I don't want to assume anything about Richard Linklater, but I will just say that he writes high dialogue very well. Like I think it's a very good scene.
I think he's an underrated character. And I think he's a good character, but it's Plummer, right? But in that scene where he's like, oh, I was thinking I had a tail. And then they're like, it's like, I was thinking about a shark. And he goes, sharks have tails.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And do you find it weird that the movie ended with the interaction between Jake and Plummer? Because I just did not pin it as like when Jake is walking to class and it's Finn and Dale walking up to him to make fun of him and his little romance with Zoe Deutch. That made sense to me. But then, well, I guess
skipping way ahead.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. I guess Plummer as a character didn't make sense. I guess because they're freshmen, they would be in the same class.
I mean, they also hung out quite a bit, those two. Like they were around each other of the freshmen.
I guess you're right.
I think what the movie like is trying to do at the end is just like it's making the point of like how really unimportant college is at college. It's like almost the least important part of like
Oh yeah.
developing as a human being is like the classes. And so the fact that we get almost zero classes, I think is like a really like cool part of this movie.
No, I agree. I agree. The other thing I want to talk about is the fight scene, the bar fight where they get kicked out of the sound machine one more time. The MVP of that whole scene is Willoughby, because I don't know if you guys noticed, but like as they're being kicked out, Willoughby like sees a joint on the ground and he goes and he picks it up and he like smokes it and makes sure it's okay, and then he's like cool, and then he walks out with them. I don't know.
He also
Everyone-
gave the guy something, like handed him something.
Money.
Yeah, I thought it was
Oh, he gave him
probably
money
that.
too?
Yeah.
Which also is a sign that he's older, that he's like, oh, this is how you smooth things over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So after this is the first time I'm noticing the little date and time sequences, the little titles at the bottom of the screen. It's like Saturday, class starts in 1 day and 17 hours. I don't know if like for me, I noticed Saturday, and then I noticed when it's at Sunday, class starts in 13 hours. Those are the two I noticed. I didn't notice any more after that or before.
There's one when he walks into the baseball house for the first time.
Oh, I missed that one. That one
And-
probably is Friday, right? Yeah.
I thought it was Thursday.
I thought this whole movie took place Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday they had class. That's how I. Well, then, if it's Thursday, I missed the Friday title card.
Well, it said like 3 days and 15 hours at the beginning, which means that it would have, I think what that means it has to have started on Thursday. Yeah, I think it would have had to have started on Thursday. Like, I think he gets there Thursday. I think they go to the bar and the disco place. I think they go to the disco place again on Friday and get kicked out and go to the country place. And then on Saturday, they meet his punk friends and go to the punk bar. And then on Sunday, they have their first scrimmage and they go to
The theater
the
play, the
theater
theater play.
party.
Yeah.
And then Monday, they go to class.
Before they have their scrimmage, well, there's also this great scene. You talked about your favorite scene being the ping pong scene, but also the knuckle flick scene with Nesbitt and how frustrated he gets about it. He's like, the rule is 2 out of 3. The rule is best 2 out of 3. You can't beat me twice in a row.
Well, I think they have those scenes back to back, and I think it was really smart because the whole scene with McReynolds, and he gets so mad that he doesn't win, and he's so competitive, and everybody in the room, the whole rest of the team is all going, Jake, 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 because they secretly love him McReynolds getting all riled up about losing. And then literally the next scene, it shows like 3 other players doing the exact same thing that McReynolds was just doing with their
Yeah, I mean they have darts going, they have basketball going. There's this whole thing where Finn starts talking about the reason they're a good baseball team is because they're all competitive. They all want to win at everything.
In the ping pong scene where Finn is trying to make a drink, and then I think it's Coma that's just like, I want to just fucking drink. And he's like, sorry for trying to, it's Roper.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, sorry for trying to class up the joint.
Well, the only one who's not doing anything competitive, who's just sitting around talking to Jake, is Finn.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't really care. And he says multiple times in the movie, he's like, I'm not going to be playing ball for my entire life. Like, I just don't care.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not. He's kind of gotten to the realization before a lot of them that, like, I'm going to have to do something else with my life. And, like, most of the rest of them aren't necessarily there yet.
Well, Jake has multiple conversations with multiple guys in the house being like, can you imagine doing anything other than baseball? And it's like, no way, man. I can't imagine doing anything other than baseball. And then he talks with Willoughby about like existential life crisis. And then he talks with Finn about like baseball is literally the least important thing. And then he has a conversation with Beverly about like life, love, and the pursuit of happening. So it's like, I don't know, it's showing that Jake can have all these different conversations and relate to a bunch of different people. I think it's just to show how multifaceted he is.
Yeah. I think now we're at the house party where Jake puts the note on Zoe Deutsch's door. And then there's this funny part where Finn is talking to 2 girls, and I'm like, oh, he's trying to convince them into a threesome, and then it cuts to like mud wrestling, which I think is very funny.
There's also a part where Plummer is being taught by Willoughby how to make brownies, and he's like, you just pour half of that into the strainer, and he just pours the entire fucking thing into the brownies.
Didn't even strain out the little like green bits. He just put the whole thing in. Oh, so gross.
I'm kind of sad that we never got to see like the result of like whoever ate those brownies were high as a fucking kite.
That's not the point. The point is like,
I know what the point is, but I just thought it would be funny too.
That's college, and it's all these dudes just like making the most disgusting concoctions. And
like the jungle juice where they're like pouring in like all the vodka and stuff, and the Willoughby and I think it's Jake or is it Finn playing golf on the roof?
Willoughby and Finn, yeah.
But the best part, I think this is what David could have been leading up to, is when Nesbitt gets his ass fucking kicked in mud wrestling by that chick.
I actually thought that was kind of lame.
I really like to think that was not part of the movie originally. That it was just supposed to be a scene with the 2 girls like doing the mud wrestling, and I really like to think that the actor that plays Nesbitt would just like, looks too damn fun. I want to just jump in there. That's probably not what happened, but that's how I like to imagine it. That he just jumped in.
I thought like the mud wrestling was actually kind of lame, and I think that's almost on purpose because it's like you're like, oh, 2 girls mud wrestling, and then you actually watch it and you're like, oh, this isn't really all that great at all. You know what I mean? Like, and they're both like barely into it. They're like, oh, I wrestled you, and then like the one girl smacked on the butt, and I guess that's how you win. And then it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. But then when Nesbitt gets in the ring with that girl and she totally kicks his ass, and then she like throws mud in his mouth, I was like,
You could see him letting her though. That was like the point of it, like me saying like it wasn't very well acted. Like you could see like him
oh,
like
I
just
didn't
like
take it that way.
allowing himself to be picked up and slammed. It looked like
I don't
WWE
think he
wrestling.
allowed. I didn't take it that way at all. I didn't take it that he allowed anything. I thought that she was just much stronger than him, and he just got his ass whooped.
No, I think that they were all sitting there acting with the two girls going woo and like pretending to cheer them on and whatever. And he just jumped in there. I really I really like to believe that.
It was done so much better in old school. That's all I'll say. The med wrestling in old school.
I don't think I've ever seen Old School.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so then after this part, we get the Sunday. It's Sunday title card. Class starts in 17 hours. We get the phone call with Jake and Bev, and then they meet in person and they like have a nice little day of it. And that's when she invites him to the theater party that night.
I like the part where she's like, "Oh yeah, you should come over." And he's like, "Well, how about right now?" And she's like, "Oh fuck, really?" And then like when he gets there, like how much effort she's put in to like look good is like really, because she's so like nonchalant as they're together, and she's like, "Oh, come to this party. All the girls will love you." Like, or like, you know, what I mean, trying to make it like, "Oh, I'm not even maybe even that interested in you," but like you can see how much effort she put in to look good. Like she is totally interested in him, right? Like I think it's just like it's really, it's not even like the movie's not like, "Hey, look at what we did here." It's just like you notice it because like, you know, you live in the world, but like it's just it was a cool touch.
So then we get to the locker room ass scene. Uh, Great joke, great prank. I love how it just does not work on Billy Autry. He comes back from like checking on his girlfriend. Jake's on the ground with the thumb in his chest, and they're like, "Yeah, you got to try this. You got to do this." He's like, "Yeah, that's cool, man. I believe you."
Billy Autry like is there's like some character traits about him, that being one, and then there's some other stuff too where it's like you think he's like a bumpkin, and like he is sort of sheltered. He's we I think like they kind of allude to him sort of being a Christian and not wanting to like screw around on his girlfriend and everything. But he is like a little bit like older and wiser than some of them, and so when they try and like play the prank on him, he's just like, "All right, guys, it's very funny. It's not gonna work."
I don't know about that because there's other scenes that prove him to be so naive. Like when
But
he
I think he can be
But that's
naive.
but that's the sheltered part, right? Like the sexual stuff that he's just like, "Oh my god, she's pregnant."
one day late.
Yeah.
No, and then when they say they see the scout painting the house and he goes, "Wow," and he like
Yeah.
gets really into it.
If they like everyone believes that but Jake.
But then you have like that scene afterwards at the cafeteria, and I think it's really kind of a good scene from him. Who he's like, Billy Autry's like, man, there's so many like different things happening today, or so many different things here. And he's talking about like the professor saying there is no God, and he's like, what does some bonehead professor know? And they're talking about God, and the professor, you know, not saying God's real or whatever. But then there's like another layer to that where he's like talking about so much happening here, and Finn looks at him and he knows he's not talking about that professor. He looks at him and he goes, yeah, there's a lot of temptations here, but we just got to be strong and go right through it. And he knows that Buter's talking about how there's so many women here at the college, and he just like the temptation to cheat on his girlfriend is great. Is like so great here. But then Finn is like, no, man, you got to stay strong in what you believe. So it's and then some other uh, teammate says something similar, like, nah, man, you gotta. That's I think it's Dale. I think Dale is like, yeah, you gotta hold fast, steadfast. And I just love how like they get girls, they want to sleep around and stuff like that, but they know that that's not what he's about and they support him that way. I think that's a really good showing that they all care for each other. And they're like, they understand each other's vulnerabilities.
Well, it's a nice difference from the rest of the movie that they're pretty much picking on Billy Buter Perkins the entire time.
Yeah.
Like they never have anything nice to say to him. They're always just like calling him the wrong names and calling him a bumpkin and teasing him and trying to trick him into believing stupid things. And then when it really comes down to it and he's actually having kind of a crisis, they're all really serious and nice and they put away the kind of ridiculousness for a minute when they know that it's really serious. It's a nice moment.
And I think the big thing that happens here at the baseball practice is, one, establishing that Jay is fucking insane, and two, Willoughby gets kicked out.
Yeah, we find out why later because he was. I think I kind of figured it out the first time it happened when I watched it with you guys years ago. That like he was just an old man because he kind of looks older. But yeah, that is like when they're afterwards. She's like, "Yeah, he's already fucking gone, and he left like a Pink Floyd album and a joint." And they're like, "And we already smoked it." Like you could tell they did.
I mean, this movie is a comedy through and through, but I would say that that's the saddest moment in the movie.
It's actually like the only like rise of like events is like the movie leads up to this baseball and then the big thing is Willoughby getting kicked off the team and then it's just like a downhill kind of for the rest of the movie, like as far as like the the inciting incident in action and all that, like if you were trying to like chart this out as like a story.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then it's funny too because it's all about like developing these characters up to that point, and then Willoughby leaves, and then the baseball practice is done, and then the movie kind of just shifts focus on the relationship between Bev and Jake, and that just kind of takes over. Like the only time we ever see any of the other guys is at the party and at the very end when they're like going to class. But yeah, the movie kind of almost switches genre from like this like hangout buddy movie to a romance.
But not really. It's still a buddy movie, but
but with more emphasis on the romance.
It's just like a moment in time. Like it's not anything. It's just this weekend.
Yeah.
And sometimes he's with his buddies and sometimes he's with Bev. Sometimes he's a country boy and sometimes he's a baseball guy.
He's a baseball.
And sometimes he's like it's that's the whole beauty of it, is that there's no like pinpoint to it. It just is a thing. It just is.
I've never had as busy of a weekend than those fucking guys had in my life.
Sound like a fucking loser. I
Mr. I would have gone to bed at 9.
Mr. Let me just hang out with Willoughby and watch Twilight Zone, motherfucker.
Yeah, it's almost 10 o'clock and we're here the fuck up. But I like the Canadian drinking game scene and then Jake having to convince Finn to come to the party because he actually clearly doesn't want them to come. And there is like this whole
you're talking about the Winnipeg flip?
I'm talking about what I'm talking about. So if you shut the fuck up, I'll finish it. But I like there actually is somewhat of a character development through like for Jake. It's like subtle and not serious, but he gets mad when they pull the prank on him and he gets like here and there. He's like, oh, you guys are just kind of fucking with me as I'm trying to like be interested in this girl. But then when he has this conversation with her and he's like, when you said the cute silent guy in the back, were you doing that to fuck with them or are you doing it because I'm cute? And she's like, well, I thought you were cute, but I never would have said it if they didn't say anything. And then also when they do the ass in his face thing, he gets super annoyed about it. And Finn is like, hey, this happens to all of us. It's how you deal with it. It is kind of a little bit like he's not used to like the kind of like the hazing and like the, just like things not necessarily going his way. And so he does start to realize that like, hey, like, Finn's got a point, and like these guys are like good for me, and like I need to come out of my shell a little bit. And so like I think that part is cool.
During the whole like the what's it called, the baseball mound, the
Scrimmage.
no, the when they're in the dugout, haha, I knew it. When they're
Sports.
When they're in the dugout, I love Finn's little explanation between the difference of a superstition and a routine. And then that's to lead to the Pete Ward scout thing, where they're like being superstitious about it, but they're all like agreeing with Finn, like, yeah, that is the difference between a superstition and a routine. And then they're like, but look at that guy way off in the distance. That's the scout for this. They're like, oh yeah, totally. They're like, I believe it. And then the super dangerous hazing with the freshman batting practice. You can fucking kill someone.
It's like dangerous if you hit someone in the head, but the chances of you actually hitting someone like from that distance is pretty low.
I
But yeah,
guess.
kind
I
of
mean,
dangerous.
yeah. That must have been fun for the actors, though, to be like duct taped to the wall.
I would fucking hate that.
I wonder, because they duct taped one of the guys upside down, which, I mean, you can really only be fully upside down for like a few minutes before you like start to lose consciousness.
I'm sure
I wonder how they did that.
They probably did it like so quick. They like put him up there, duct tape him upside down, shot the shot, and then took him off immediately. They'd have to, unless if it was some sort of rig where it looks like he was upside down, but he wasn't.
Well, they did a wide shot, so you could see. Let's get to the party
where Jake is the White Rabbit.
I think the theater party is my favorite scene.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a favorite scene, because we get Finn, kind of breaking character
a bit.
His like facade that he puts up, we get that. We get.
Did he tell you about his average size cock yet?
Finn, are you gonna tell her about your average size cock?
What I love about that is that he's sitting there talking to this girl about his horoscope, and the Dale and Blake and Jake, are sitting there like giggling about him. But if you listen to what Finn is saying, it actually makes perfect sense for this character that he's been the whole time. Like, you can tell that he actually did research on his chart, and he actually memorized it, and he actually thought about how it applied to his life. Like, it wasn't just a fake little thing. Like, he actually did that.
He goes, if I were to draw like a pie chart, like a Venn diagram between all the girls I got laid with and all the girls who believed in horoscopes, he's like, I would still be a virgin. And then the freshman guy goes, yeah, but I'd rather fucking be a virgin than to admit that my horoscope makes me a good dad.
I wanted to ask Taylor this, since you're a woman. I like have known Finns in my life before, guys that are just I have a begrudging respect for someone who is just so honest in like their lechery that he's like, I'm here to sleep with as many women as I can. I'm not going to be an asshole about it. I'll treat them properly, but I'm open with like, this is what I want. And like, I'm not going to pretend to be like a nice guy who's like, oh, I mean, he does like a routine with each of them, right? He tells them what, like, oh yeah, I like horoscopes, or oh, I like this, but just like, I think that just the openness with which he's like, yeah, this is what I want. And you know what I mean? I appreciate his honesty.
I totally agree. I think that I would rather have a dude. I mean, obviously I'm married now, but when I was single, I would have much rather had a guy be like, hey, I know what I want. I don't really want to be in a relationship. I'm, a junior in college. I just want to hang out.
Go ahead.
I would much rather have a guy be honest and say, hey, I'm a junior in college. I just kind of want to mess around and meet a lot of people. And this is what I'm interested in. I would much rather have someone say that than pretend that it was going to go somewhere and then like just kind of treat you like shit. Like at least he was honest in what he wanted.
But the thing about that scene too is that Finn is, you find that he's always the guy who has something to say no matter what the situation is. And then when he's called out on it, I don't know. I think that scene is important because he's called out on it. He's made fun of it. And he kind of breaks down. He's kind of like,
he's easily wounded, okay?
He is easily wounded, but then he's like, that was actually like a really cute girl. And you guys ruined that for me. And like you could genuinely see like he was like upset about missing his chance with that girl.
He just seemed horny, honestly. I do like how he's like, all the time we're playing baseball, you guys are just talking about women. And now there's some women around, and all you guys want to do is talk about fucking baseball.
I love
I,
that.
I love at the end, too, when the girl who, like, rejected them in the beginning comes up, and she's like, what, no line? And he's like, nope, I'm the silent type, which is his line. His line is like, I'm going to say nothing, and this is going to work, and then it does.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the scene where Jake is the White Rabbit and they're doing that like Alice in Wonderland faux dating show. Plumber goes, is the Queen of Hearts a dude? And then someone goes, I don't know. And just the delivery of that is so funny to me.
I love that whole scene where he has to fill in as a White Rabbit and she's so into it and she's got a little voice going and she has a wig and she's very like in character. And then he pops in, he's like, sup, I'm late.
And then all his friends are like, woo! And then he's like, peace, son.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that. And it's a cute little exchange because they really don't have any like their big interests. That Bev and Jake
it's opposite of each other.
is like complete opposite, and they really have nothing in common in that area. And so when he gets on stage and he can't act at all, and it like doesn't even know how to try, she finds it really cute, and I just love that little exchange.
I have to say, like after they're in the river together and he's talking about his Greek baseball paper to get in college and stuff like that, I just found that really genuine. I really like that scene a lot. Like I believe their budding romance at that point. And actually it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie is them on the tubes in the river, and it's like it's the calm. It's like the most calm the movie has been this entire time.
Yeah, there's something so honest about it because like you were saying, when they're leaving the party and they're walking to the river and he's like, do you actually like me? Like it was so like people don't usually do that. That's not something like I would never do that. I would never like to someone I just started talking to be like, did you mean it when you said you liked me? Like I would never do that, but he's just so honest and he's like, I really want to know. And then when they're in the river and they have that exchange, it's so honest. It's not something that like a usual romance that's not really going to go anywhere. I mean, like how many romances do you have, like quick romances in college? That's not something that would happen in one of those.
Well, even like at the end where they're going to class and they're breaking off, and she reveals that she's going to New York as soon as she's out of here. You kind of actually see him hurt by that. You actually kind of see him like, oh, like he gets it, but also he still like stands there and like waves goodbye. Final thoughts, David. Real, true blue final thoughts.
It's great. Just a very good hang, which is the intention of the movie. So it's great.
Taylor, final thoughts?
It's the best movie ever. If you want a non-traumatizing movie that is just you just smile the whole time. Like it starts, My Sharona, You smile, and then you don't stop smiling until the end of the movie. And then the credits roll, and then they all wrap, and then you smile throughout the entire credits. It's just a good time. It's just a feel-good, character-driven good time.
She makes it seem like we do traumatizing movies most of the time,
You
David.
do. You really do.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. I'm Alain.
And this is David, and I finally watched Everybody Wants Some.
Bye.